Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Welcome into CBT Now on the CBT Automotive Network. We're all good at tracking the big stuff, but it's the hidden costs that quietly eat into your income. Joining us on today's show is Larry Levine, who is an expense reduction consultant at P3 Cost Analysts, to walk us through how you can uncover savings and put money back into your bottom line. So Larry, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I'm thrilled to be here.
Sure. So what are some of the biggest hidden expenses that you see that dealers overlook? I mean, the dealers just sit there and write checks all day to vendors. Sometimes they don't even know what they're writing the check to or for. But talk to us about that.
Yeah, the expenses in my space that they're just writing checks to without consideration tend to be in the area of utilities, telecom,
Yeah.
waste, uniforms, towels and rags and mats, insurance,
Yeah.
in some cases property tax. They're felt to be fixed costs that they take for granted, and there's no opportunity to negotiate when in fact there is.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you recommend switching, or is it more about renegotiating with the partners that you already have?
Well, I would not recommend switching unless there's a good reason to switch. But in all cases, you know, attempt to negotiate. Don't necessarily take the rate that the utility company provides to you, even if you think you're in a regulated space or deregulated space, or the waste expense, the price the waste vendors gives you. Don't just take that. Attempt to negotiate.
Yeah.
They could probably do better for you than they're already offering you. There's a lot of fat on their bones.
Right, right. And sometimes in order to get what a plausible number is, you got to bring in that other vendor, right? To say, hey, here's what we're currently spending. What can you do? And then they come in with a 15%, 10%, 25% savings that you can then take that maybe to your current vendor and say, look, I know I can get this already. And many times they'll match that, right?
If you do, and that is one way of doing that for sure, because you don't necessarily know what the other options are for you. So you can come in, you're being charged $2,000 a month for your rent. You say, is this really the right price for that I should be charged? This other vendor is going to charge me $1,500. That's one way somebody can negotiate on their own. But in the end, how much can that other vendor come down for you? You don't necessarily know what their cost level is.
Right.
Dealerships, I mean, out of all the business groups that we work with, I'm most confident that dealerships are going to attempt to negotiate rates. This is what they do all day long. They negotiate rates on the other side of a deal.
Right.
But when it comes to their utilities, I have no doubt they're going to try to negotiate rates. But do they have a procurement team that understands what it is that the vendor's offering, what the cost level is?
Sure.
So again, I expect they'll negotiate, but when they're negotiating an auto deal, they know what their cost level is. They know ultimately how far down they can go. They know where they can make money on other services and other features that's coming with the car, but they're blind to what the waste vendor is capable of. So yeah, go ahead and try to negotiate down 10, 15 points. Try to bring in another vendor, but ultimately, what are you up against?
Sure.
I don't expect you would know.
Yeah, right. That's right. So I when I was running a Toyota dealership, we brought in an expert in this area, much like Larry Levine, and they spent some time with us, about 2 weeks actually, and kind of going back and forth, and we're giving them all the information and the contracts and what have you. They saved us $20,000 a month across all of these different areas. To your point, whether it be uniforms or insurance or just a whole host of different areas. And because of their expertise, as I'm sure you guys have the same checklist to say these are the hot spots, right? These are the culprits in most dealerships. They knew to go right for them. But $20,000 a month, man, I'll take that all day long. It's $250,000
For sure.
a year, right?
That's $240 a year, and if you got 10 of these locations, that's $2 million a year. And if you're talking about valuation of the business, well, you may or may not be typically a 5 times multiplier.
Yeah,
that's $10 million in your pocket just via one-time effort.
Right. Right.
But you're absolutely right. $20,000 is absolutely plausible. I don't know how large the dealership is you're talking about, but when you take into consideration,
we were doing about 225 cars new and used a month. And just to give you an idea of the volume and the size of the store, there's a lot of stores out there that do that kind of volume. But 20 grand a month, man, it blew us away. And one of the
Sure.
biggest areas that we saved was insurance. That alone was about $8,000 a month across everything. And these insurance companies that you're currently with, they're not raising their hand to come in and say, hey, by the way, things have changed and we can save you a whole lot of money, until you make the call, right?
What I say about insurance companies is that they're not in the business to pay out deals. They're in the business to make money for their shareholders.
That's right.
And they're not going to offer incentives to you, and their brokers are not incentivized to save you money.
Right.
We can get in there with our cost level databases. Any of the competition, the company you work with, we all have to some degree cost level databases. We have industry insiders that have worked at the insurance company, the waste company, the telecom, the utilities, that know how to negotiate, know what is negotiable, know in what order to negotiate, compare it to the benchmark database. We can implicitly bring in those other vendors, and the vendor knows we can bring in those other vendors, and drive the rates down to those levels, and achieve on an aggregate 30, 40. It all depends on what you're spending. And in the insurance world, because you mentioned it before, we could not only work with the carrier to reduce the rates, but we can incentivize the broker with a different model. And he or she is incentivized to save you money rather than to sell you insurance.
Yeah.
So we could turn that all upside down. And similarly, if you have legal needs, you bring in an attorney. If you have social media needs, you bring in a social media agency. You have bookkeeping needs, you bring in an accountant. You may not realize it, but you have cost reduction needs. You bring in a cost reduction consultant who can do better than you can on your own. And in all cases, those third parties, the accountant, the bookkeeper, the social media, the attorney, they focus on what they're capable of doing, what you're not capable of doing. So you could focus on selling, I think you said 225, the 226th car. How many cars would you need to sell to net the $20,000 per month you saved?
Yeah.
Not possible.
Right.
Not possible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. And that 250 grand, or 20 grand a month, 250 grand a year, 240 a year. Yeah. You're not paying commissions to anybody on it. It's going right to the bottom line, right?
So we have to get paid. Most of these, there's 4 or 5 major cost reduction players out there, and dozens of smaller, single category players. Most of them work on a contingency fee basis. If there are no savings, there is no fee.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because the 240 a year that I mentioned was after the person got paid on doing the audit that was a net to us, which we were pretty happy
with.
So
that's just 40,000 saved, and after the term of their agreement, I don't know if it's 3 years or 5 years, you no longer pay them the 20, and you're keeping the full 40.
Yeah.
The landscape may change a little bit with respect to actual costs, but you're giving up I think it was 50% probably you were paying them for several years, but after the term, the full 100% comes to your bottom line, and it's all gravy at that point, and it increases your, as I said before, the evaluation by that much, but by whatever the multiplier may be.
Right. And the advantage was that, in some of these cases, they became friends of ours, these vendors, right, over the years. And by bringing somebody in, I wasn't the bad guy. I simply said, hey, we're bringing in, somebody that's going to do an audit on this, that wants to see if they can save us some money. So I wasn't the one that had to look somebody in the face that I've been doing business with for the last 3.5, 4 years. Now a friend of mine to say, hey man, we're going to cut you, or we need a discount, or we need this or that. It was all in the hands of a third party, which was nice.
Telecom utilities, you probably don't have a friend selling you your wireline cell service or your gas and electricity, but you may very well have a friend who's your uniforms and laundry services representative, who's your B2B merchant account representative, who might be selling you insurance. And it gets a little awkward sometimes. Yeah. We've had clients say, you know what, they become friends. I'm very comfortable with my uniforms linens rep. Yeah. She's such a nice person, but you're overpaying $40,000. She visits you once a month, she has no problem taking your money. How much of a friend is she really? That's in some cases, there's what we'll call kickbacks, tickets to the game, a bit on the boat.
Sure.
You're paying for that. That's right. So if you're comfortable paying for that, that's fine. but understand they're not giving it to you out of the goodness of their heart. They
That's
give
right.
it to you because you're paying them
Yeah.
for that boat.
Yeah.
You paid for that boat.
That's right. And nowadays, so many dealers have got, I think the average dealer owns 2.5 dealerships currently, but many dealers own 5, 6, 10, 15, 30 stores. And man,
Sure.
that savings can really add up, right? I mean, if you're
It
talking,
adds up. So for sure, it adds up. I would say that the smaller dealerships tend to be easier to work with. Don't have core staff in the procurement operations group that that are responsible for it. The larger dealerships, they have people responsible for some of these indirect vendor overcharges, indirect
sure,
vendor charges, but don't have the nothing personal when I say this. They don't have the competence. They don't have the background to know, as I mentioned before, what's negotiable, what's not negotiable. They feel they have the capabilities, and this goes up to COO, CFO level. They know how to negotiate cars. They think they know how to negotiate on the other side, and that's true to some extent. But again, they don't have all the the detailed knowledge, the industry inside knowledge that a true cost reduction uh, consultancy has
sure,
to do as good a job as possible.
sure.
And I think that's one of the challenges we have overall in the industry, whether it's dealerships or property managers for a commercial real estate group. Someone is ultimately responsible for this, and they feel that we're going to expose their shortcomings by coming in and saving an extra $50,000 that they couldn't have. No, I mean they did as good a job as they possibly could do with
Yeah,
the knowledge that they have. That's
right.
not They weren't hired because they have a core competency in waste forensic audits. They were hired because they have a competency in general managing and operating
That's
a
right.
dealership
That's
or
right.
a multifamily community.
Yeah,
So pass it off to somebody that has expertise, as I said, social media, attorney, bookkeeping, cost reduction, so you could focus on the rest of your culture, the rest of selling top line, dealing with recalls and dealing with
yeah,
customer satisfaction, and bringing in the next um, the new year of the new auto year, the new models into the showroom.
sure.
That's what you know to do. I don't know to do that. I know to do this. That's We work
Yeah.
together.
For a dealer who's already stretched, thin, managing the day-to-day operations, what's
Sure.
the first step to finding these savings?
If they're on their own, give a call.
Yeah.
Call the phone company. Call the insurance company.
Okay.
With the phone company, you may not be on the best plan. You may be able to put phone lines together and optimize your plan options. But there are a lot of other behind the scenes things with telephones and utilities that you will never see. But just call. Your uniforms and laundry guy. Can we get a few points off on this because I've been a long-term customer of yours?
Yeah.
If you don't have the time to even do that, look up, search for a cost reduction agency, go through kind of what you and I are doing right now, a little bit of a discovery.
Yeah.
And ultimately, once you sign an agreement with them, it's very little effort on your part. Provide contracts if you have them. Many people don't even have their contracts anymore. Provide invoices for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months on a category by category basis.
Yeah.
And let the consultant do their work. If they have questions, they'll let you know. But it's minutes to hours a month that you need to support them while they spend their time and effort going through every single invoice, every single location. We've had clients that have one location. We have clients that have 200 or 300 locations. There's a lot of data scraping, a lot of automation involved in it, some small amounts of AI, depending on which vendor you're talking to. But this is what they do in and day out. And they're incentivized. Cost reduction companies are incentivized on a dollar for dollar basis to make it even better for you. So your staff, I'm looking at you as a GM of a dealership group right now in this role playing. Is your staff incentivized to do that, or can they do something else better with their time?
Right.
So
Oh, yeah. There's no question. I don't know that you want your staff doing that because they're, burdened with everything else and running the dealership, right?
Right, and they just don't have the competence. Again, I say that it sounds like a negative word, but they don't have the expertise
Yeah.
to do what
Right.
a cost reduction forensic audit expert does.
Right. Right. Agreed.
This is all they do, and they do it on one category. The waste auditors do only waste.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
insurance auditors do only insurance. The utility
Gotcha.
auditors do only utility.
Gotcha. Larry Levine, expense reduction consultant with P3 Cost Analysts. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. This is, I think, been very enlightening for a lot of dealers that are listening. They're probably making some notes and scratching their head right now thinking, wow, how much could we save? If it's 20 grand a month, per rooftop, I'll take that, right?
That's a good number.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate the time.
Thanks.